Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of eHeroes. This is episode 230. And, we live in this world where lawyers are not compassionate. And, I'm not saying they're not all that way, but there's a few of them out there that want to be emphatic to their clients. They want to have I guess this friendly family understanding that they are there for them. So I brought on Pasadena attorney uh, James Tedford, and we're going to have a nice chat. So welcome, Ted, and thanks for being here.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks a lot.
You
Look
know
forward to
what
talking to you.
what really surprises me is you actually put it on your website. You're there for them. I mean, you understand that compassion because of your past circumstances that led you to become a lawyer. Can you share that?
Sure. Um, yeah, I mean, when I went to law school, I went to be a sports lawyer, wanted to be an agent. But after my second year of law school, after I had just gotten married, I was in a very, very severe rear end car accident where I was rear ended at a complete stop, and the car behind me was doing about 65 miles an hour. Caused my car to roll over, and it ultimately resulted in two cervical disc herniations at 23 years old.
Wow.
Um, as a result, I spent the next almost 30 years fighting and battling against the pain of having severe neck injury. Had epidural injections, had uh, chiropractic care, acupressure, acupuncture, you name it. And ultimately, it resulted in me having to have spinal surgery.
Wow.
And so, as a result, I was literally in the same position as my clients.
And so, one day you just decide, hey, I need to be a lawyer. I need to defend others. I need to prevent others from basically getting the injuries that I have, or at least getting compensated for them.
Yeah, I mean, well, the real injustice in my case was the person that hit me was uninsured, and being a young adult, um, scraping by to get through law school. I had pretty minimal insurance coverage, and at that time, I had the minimum uninsured motorist policy of 15,000. So I got 15,000 bucks to carry me through the next 30 years of treatment.
I see these ads all the time, and I'm not going to point fingers at Geico or these other, TV ads that insurance companies run. I mean, I think everybody needs insurance, should have it, but having not enough is awful.
Yeah,
And when you're advertising, hey, this is a way to get cheap insurance, so you're legal, but you get into an accident and you're underinsured, that's just causing pain to you or someone else, and now they got to probably sue, and you're going to get sued for not having enough insurance, and yeah, it's terrible. I don't understand why they do it.
well, I mean, that's the trick. They do it because that's how they make money. I mean, those insurance companies are profit bearing companies, and they're looking at the bottom line all day long. So they can put the friendly lizard with the English accent, or the good hands people, or whatever the flavor of the week is, as far as getting people to think they're chummy and nice. But on the flip side, once you assert a claim against an insurance company, they're going to do everything they can to pay the least amount possible.
Right. And you go after them, and
Absolutely.
to the fullest extent. And sometimes, yeah, okay, you're going to save maybe a couple $100 on your insurance, but at the end, when the accident's all over and you go to court, and now you're looking at $1 million that the insurance is paying out, or if you don't have
Nothing.
enough, or if you don't have enough insurance, maybe you
I
have to
have
sell your
a
house or your assets to cover it.
I have a perfect example right now of a recent client who got rear-ended. She was doing nothing but driving on the freeway, and the traffic stopped. She got blasted from behind by a truck, and she has no uninsured motorist policy, and the truck that hit her was uninsured. and she's in the hospital.
Wow. Yeah.
She had 37 fractures, collapsed lung, broken femur. You can imagine
Yeah.
the pain, the uncertainty. She doesn't know where she's going to live when she gets out of the hospital. She doesn't have family close by to take care of her, and she's in her late 60s.
Yeah. That's and I see these accidents. I witnessed a motorcycle accident just the other day, but I couldn't stop because of the way the traffic was flowing. But you saw the guy who was all gnarly on the ground, and his arms and legs were all twisted, and you just know, driving past him, he would have never made it to the hospital.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
terrible.
just so people come to you.
Mhm.
They're in their weakest moment. They're frustrated. They're annoyed. They're angry. And so, what's the process? I mean, how do you deal?
I mean, the first thing you have to do, obviously, when you go through the intake is to get to know the individual and find out about all the facts surrounding the accident to establish liability. Um, but then from there, we have to find out what kind of insurance they have, if they have insurance. There people don't realize, I don't think, that just because you have a health insurance doesn't mean you're going to get the right treatment.
Right.
And there are a variety of health insurance policies out there, and some are, A plus premium Cadillac insurance, and you can go to any doctor you want, any specialist. You can get MRIs, and you can get CAT scans and physical therapy, and hyperbaric chamber, and all kinds of crazy stuff out there that your insurance will pay for. But the average person has kind of, to be honest, crappy insurance.
Right.
They are part of an HMO. They have to go to a primary care physician. During the last few years with COVID, that has made it so challenging to get clients in to see their doctors, because most of them didn't want people in their offices. So they were then resorting to telemed and video med. But that doesn't help somebody get better. And it certainly doesn't establish a personal connection with the doctor so that the doctor understands the person's injuries and how they're progressing.
Hmm.
So I think one of the main elements the service that we provide is helping to guide people through their medical recovery, making sure that if they have concussion, that they get evaluated for a traumatic brain injury. And a lot of those things are available. We send them to doctors that will work on what's called a lien. And a lien is where basically you get the treatment up front and you don't have to pay for it immediately. It's delayed until your case settles or you go to trial and get a jury verdict. Um, Insurance companies hate that. They try to do everything they can to make it look bad, like the attorney is practicing medicine and telling them where to go, when in reality that's just not true. We send them to a what we call a pain management doctor,
Hmm.
which is essentially a primary care physician who quarterbacks their treatment, sends them to physical therapy if they need therapy, sends them for x-rays if they need x-rays, to neurology, to orthopedics. Ultimately, I've had many clients who've had neurosurgeons operate on their back and their neck on a lien.
Hmm.
And like I said, insurance companies don't like it. But what they'll do on the flip side is, if you stay with your own insurance and you have difficulty getting in to see your doctor, then they complain that there was a gap in treatment and you weren't taking it upon yourself to mitigate your damages and try and get in and take care of the problem, and you're malingering.
Hmm.
So they have arguments for everything.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
key is quarterbacking the care to make sure that we can sort of avoid some of those pitfalls. And then from there, it's a matter of building the case, building the story for your client, finding out about them, finding out about not only how the accident impacts your particular client,
Hmm.
but every time somebody gets injured like this, they usually have kids, they have a significant other, they have family members that rely on them. And so that really adds to the whole picture when you can paint it for the insurance company that this is just not an individual who, sort of tweaked their neck.
Right.
This is somebody who's now out there doing the best that they can to provide for their family and take care of everybody than usually putting themselves last.
Yeah. I mean, you hit it there, you try to get their story.
Yeah,
My son about 6 months ago was hit, um, and it was just a parking lot, collision. Well, the other person was so distracted because she just gotten her nails done. She was going to her, I guess she was preparing for her daughter's wedding. And so her mind wasn't on driving, it was on everything else.
sure.
So when you can get someone's story, and the only reason we got that story is because when I went there with my wife to help my wife started talking to the driver. And so I guess when two women start talking, they get the information, you know.
Yeah, we don't
And
always have that luxury. We
right.
certainly
So
don't get to be there at the scene and
right.
interview the
So,
defendant.
when injuries like that happen, you have to get witness statements, you have to get stories and from both sides. And so how does sometimes lawyers don't always have the luxury to do that, but technology today has made it so much easier.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I have employees that work with me and have worked with me for a number of years who are attorneys, paralegals, law clerks. And one of the first things we do is try to get witness statements, recorded statements from the parties involved or even the independent witnesses, um, so that we can preserve that testimony. And later on, if we need to go into litigation to fight with the insurance company in court, then we have that as backup before we go into a deposition and interview them basically under penalty of perjury.
hmm is California different in some of their rules, insurances, and laws, and versus some of the other states?
I think so. I mean, in
You
California per
think so?
se, we have what we call comparative liability. So
Mhm.
that's one particular difference from a lot of states. And what that means is the fault of an accident can be apportioned. So many times, what the defense is trying to do, or the insurance company is trying to do, is put fault on
Mhm.
the injured party to some degree, because that will at least lessen their exposure. In other words, if they see a case as a case that's worth $100,000 and they can shave off 15 to 20%, they've just saved $20,000 on that case.
Yeah.
And so that's one big difference. The other one, I mean, insurance in California is mandatory, but I'd say probably about 30% don't have it.
Wow.
And there's really not a lot of enforcement on that issue.
And what happens if you have an accident with no insurance? Do they go after you?
Nobody goes after them. That's the problem.
Well, and here you go. You defend.
Because they're judgment proof. I mean, the
Well,
problem is you have somebody who's uninsured, and if they don't own an immense amount of property or have assets somewhere that are somehow unprotected, you can take a case, and if you go after an uninsured motorist, so for example, if you hit my client and I went after you, I could take it all the way to trial. I could spend $150,000 in costs and 3 years of time and obtain a $1.5 million judgment for my client. And then you turn around the next day and file a bankruptcy and
yeah,
it's gone.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, insurance coverage is the name of the game. If not insurance coverage, then you're looking for corporations and other types of entities that have assets and they can't declare bankruptcy.
Right. But you also defend the criminal side too, not just
I do.
personal injury. And I know that takes a lot more, I guess, time versus personal injury cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the criminal defense world, we definitely have to be more hands on. There are a lot more court appearances, there are a lot more interaction with the client, specifically on a day to day basis, and the cases move at a much greater rate. In other words, you take a case, and if it's in a murder case or an attempted murder case, those tend to string out a little bit longer. But on your basic felony type cases, or even misdemeanor cases, they move at a pretty good clip. You're talking about 3 to 6 months before the case is either at trial or resolved.
Wow. Yeah, because I know a lot, at least in Pennsylvania, sometimes the personal injury case will take 2, 3 years before it even winds its way into court. And then by that time, the person has, incapacitated or in a hospital, or they're in hospice, wherever they are, and all they just want to do is get on with their life.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
true.
yeah, the criminal side moves faster.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
it's
Definitely. And it's like I say, it's more hands-on. If you're in state court, I mean, I handle both criminal and, federal and state court. And state court actions move at a much greater pace than do
mhm.
federal cases.
But
Um,
you've been doing this for 30 years, though. I mean, you've probably seen kids and grandkids and extended
I
family,
am. In
and
fact, it's very interesting. Currently, I'm representing the kids of a lot of people my own age who I went to school with, high school, grammar school, and now I'm representing their kids. And who knows? Maybe I'll be around to represent their kids. They'll have triple generation of representation.
how's that make you feel, though? I mean,
Old.
because well, old, but I'm older. We're the same age, but it just when you start helping the next generation,
Well,
or
it feels good. I mean, obviously, it I think says something about the relationship I created with the parent who's
Mhm.
referring their child to me,
Right.
in the sense that if I've represented them or knew them in some other capacity, they still have the trust to send their own child to me, and know that I'll take good care of them and do everything I can to protect them.
Yeah, and it goes back to compassion, because you felt compassion, you felt empathy, you felt a personal responsibility to help these people, and now they're saying, "Yeah, I trust him so much. I want him to represent my son, my grandson," and that speaks volumes, because a lot of big attorney firms are just there to churn and burn. They just want that cycle
Yeah,
of
I mean,
customers.
I can honestly say, as you know, I'm not. You're not going to find my face on a billboard. You're not going to see me on the 2 o'clock in the morning commercials that run all night. Um, we have a fairly medium-sized office, and we pay close attention to our clients. We get to know them, and as a result, most of my clients come from referral.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the best way to do it. And granted, I'm in the marketing business, but one of the things I strongly encourage everybody to do is have some type of referral program, whether you're just asking or whether you actually encourage. Um, the more you can get in referral, the better.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably the part that I'm learning more now than I used to. Is it's important to ask.
Hmm.
Um, I've built those relationships, I get those referrals, but over time, in the past, I didn't ask for referrals very much. I felt that maybe that was overstepping my place, and maybe that's an old-fashioned sort of point of view. But nowadays, it seems that everybody's asking somebody for something. So uh, I have built referral networks that I work with, and I'm not afraid to ask.
And you're probably not also afraid to say no. So a lot of people contact you. A lot of people say, "I want your help," but maybe the case just isn't worth it. Maybe the person just is guilty of sin. Maybe whatever the reason, you got to
It's
turn them
hard.
away.
I mean, that's that's a lesson that has taken me 30 years to develop, the skills to know when to say no.
Right.
And I gotta be honest, it's still really, really hard to say no. You talk to somebody and they're in need, and they may have been in an accident, but you have to sometimes say, well, we have to balance out the equities. And if you hire me, you may not get much recovery on the back end because it's your case value is not very high on the personal injury side. On the criminal side, I have to factor in how long is the case going to go? What's the complexity level? Are we going to be going to trial? Are we in a situation where we're trying to negotiate the best deal
Hmm.
because the government has the goods on us? Or are we going for a not guilty because justice needs to be served?
Hmm.
And that takes a lot of time to develop. I think the skills and be able to identify early on what the case is really about and where it's going to go.
Yeah. Wow. And
Uh,
I, I, w-
I heard a phrase. I heard a phrase. I was at a personal injury conference, and I heard some guys talking, and they had a saying that was very catchy, but to some degree, it kind of broke my heart. And that was, all we do, we look at the case to see if the juice is worth the squeeze. And I get it. I mean, I get it from a business standpoint, but at the same time, it's hard to for me to look at a case and look at a client and say, oh well, if you don't have the bucks, then I can't help you.
yeah. And then the flip side, though, you might be able to help somebody who maybe wasn't quite worth it, and they're going to refer you to somebody who is.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, there is a balance there. I know from being an entrepreneur that sometimes I do have to say no. I have to say, I have to look at it. Okay, not only am I raising a family and kids and grandkids, but I got employees. I got vendors, and so if I take this,
And you have other clients that you want to
yeah,
provide quality service to.
right, and so I get, I mean, I want to help people too, but at what expense? And granted, not every car injury, not every car accident. Maybe it's only a couple $1,000 in damage to their car, or maybe it's just a simple broken bone. You know,
Yeah,
those
I
aren't.
mean, if the value is questionable, one of the things that I learned a long time ago is people just need to be told the truth. They
Hmm.
really just you need to be honest with them and explain the what goes it factors into whether or not an attorney is necessary for a case. And we've developed a program where we can help clients through the small claims process.
Hmm.
In California, you can get up to $10,000 for a claim. So if we provide them with the tools to be able to pursue their own case, I've had clients who I've rejected their cases, and then 2 or 3 years later, either themselves or family members have been referred to me by them
Hmm.
because they were so pleased that I was actually able to guide them through that process.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of many lawyers who would refer somebody to a small claims case and show them how to do it without getting any money at all. That's to me, that's unheard of. But that just goes back to your understanding of compassion and helping people. And maybe you're not going to make any money, but you're going to help them do it themselves.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, sometimes you have to get to know the person. And I had a consultation last night with a lady who was on somebody else's property. It was a business, and it was a recycling center. She got out of her car, and she doesn't know how she fell. She doesn't know what she tripped on, and she was embarrassed, and she went to the bathroom, cleaned herself up the best she could, told the people at the front that she had fallen, and then she thought, well, maybe I should pursue this as a legal claim. Well, I had to explain to her that just because you get injured on somebody else's property
Hmm.
doesn't mean they're liable for your injuries, right? But through talking to her, what I did learn was that the company had an insurance policy, and they had what's called a med pay portion of their policy, which is a no fault portion of an insurance policy that is designed to pay for those types of incidents. So all of her medical bills, out of pocket expenses, everything's going to be paid for by that med pay policy, because it turned out to be a pretty big one, $25,000 med pay policy, and she ended up having a broken leg. She didn't realize it at the time, but when she went to the doctor later that night, she had fractured her fibula.
Wow. Yeah.
But
That's
on the same token, I had to be honest with her and explain to her, just because you fall down and you're on somebody else's property doesn't mean you go after them and you sue
right. Yeah. Although California has been one of those states that's been labeled "sue crazy." Um,
them.
how do you deal with that?
I mean, again, I think it just goes back to integrity and honesty and being able to explain to a client. Sometimes, and maybe it's just that there are so many attorneys in California competing, and they think, well, if I just file anything, something will stick.
Right.
I don't subscribe to that. I don't think it's ethical, and I don't think it does a service, because at the end of the day, if you don't have a good case, they're going to be disappointed at the end.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, let's talk about disappointments. I know that you just came off of a huge case, and the verdict was a little, not entirely on your side. Um, so when you spend all that time with somebody and you don't get them the verdict that you want, how do you feel? I mean, uh,
It's a mixed feeling. I mean, the case you're referring to, lasted for 5 years. The trial was 6 months long, and it was a multiple defendant case, a conspiracy to commit robberies, and during those robberies, some rapes were committed, some kidnapping was involved, and ultimately there was a murder. So going into the case, I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and my client was pegged as the leader of the conspiracy, as the mastermind, if you will. And in California, we have what's called the felony murder rule. And so even if you're not present when these crimes are occurring, the guys that committed them, you end up with the same liability as they do.
wow,
And so my client was facing 15 different possibilities of getting a life sentence. There were 15 different ways, or what we call life enhancements, and we beat 14 of them. But he got one. He got convicted on the felony murder because the state was able to prove that he was the leader organizer of this conspiracy to commit the robberies, and that he provided the weapon that ultimately was the murder weapon. So that was
but
difficult to swallow. I'm still sort of coming
processing.
off of that, and like I told you earlier, I'm recovering. But the good news is, my client was very, very grateful. Even after the trial, I spent a lot of time with him the following day, and he had nothing but nice things to say and good things to say about the defense that
Hmm.
I was able to provide for him.
Well,
Uh,
you knock those convictions down from 15 to one.
yeah,
I mean,
but
that to me, that's a heck of a win, even though he's still,
he's still facing life.
yeah.
But like the thing with a case like that is there's so many different people involved in the case, right? We talk about the actual defendant that I got to know, and it wasn't easy to get to know him. I live in Pasadena area, and this case was venued in Northern California. 390 miles away. So I had to spend some time going up there and getting to know him because he was incarcerated for the last 5 years pending trial. But in addition to that, I got to know his girlfriend. I got to know his children. I got to know his mother and father, and really understand this family and sort of what made them tick and why they were still so supportive of their son, even though he was charged with these crimes.
Wow. Yeah, it's. I think listening to this story, I get this feeling. Well, I kind of already knew, but you will do what you have to do. I mean, you're going to be that person that understands their family, understands everything, the whole complete story, and you won't stop until it's righted. And I'm sure that the family's very appreciative of your support. And
They are. I mean, the mother was so kind. She delivered a gift to my office last week,
wow.
and this is 1 week post trial. She came in and left a gift for me, and a nice card, and I called her back and talked to her and thanked her, and she just said, "I know you did every possible thing you could to try and save my son."
Hmm. When you're not saving lives, what do you like to do?
I like to watch movies, TV, but I also like to I like to snowboard. I like to off-road race. I actually have an off-road race car, and I've been racing for about 25 years
Wow.
in little races like the Baja 1000 and the Baja 500 and things like that. Um, I ride dirt bikes and I hunt.
And I think I saw a picture of you at a stadium. Was that football?
I am a very, very avid fan of Los Angeles sports. I attend regularly. I attend Dodger games, LAFC soccer games. Who, by the way, I got to give a shout out. They just won the championship for MLS this year, and LA Kings hockey. So I've got season tickets to all three, and I rotate around and try and hit as many games as possible.
And it's probably kind of hard when you're defending clients.
It
Not
is.
you're missing some of your games there, but
Well, I miss a lot of them, but I, my employees make out because they get to use them when I'm not using them. So,
yeah, how do people find you? Where do they go?
well, website tedfordlaw.com is probably the best way to at least get an introduction to me.
Mhm.
I also have a Facebook page. Tedford and Associates is the name of the firm, and people hit me up there too.
So if they want to learn more about you, or they want to go Baja racing.
That's right.
But
Maybe.
this is what makes you an e-hero, because you're not only are a compassionate person, you're out there to protect the rights of others, but you also enjoy having fun, with your family and your friends, and even your coworkers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I really do. So I'm sure you hear this from the lawyers you work with. The
So
the, the satisfaction rate, right, of lawyers is pretty low. Kind of a mishmash, but most of them are not very happy in their work. And I've been doing it for, like I said, almost 30 years. I love doing what I do. I love
mhm,
helping people, and I love going to work and working with my team. I've my team's all been together for almost a decade now,
wow,
uh, and I think the longest I have right now is 12 years. One of my staff has been with me, and I love working with them.
yeah. Is there and we're going to switch gears here a little bit, just to talk about cars. I'm not a big fan of Tesla. I've driven in them. I've gone to the factory tour. I just don't think they're the safest cars out there.
No, definitely not.
You
And
know,
I've seen a ton of those Tesla, accidents already where it's quite obvious that it's not user error.
right? With a front impact, most gas powered cars have an engine, which is and motor mounts, which are going to help slow the crumple, or the accident there. Teslas don't have that. They have this empty trunk space,
Yep,
and there's nothing but your legs that are going to get crumpled. So,
yep,
not a big fan.
no. And not to mention the automated driving features that people maybe they misuse them, but I don't think it's necessarily misuse because I think that even Elon Musk has come out and talked about how these cars should be able to drive themselves.
Yeah.
And that's just not true. It's not the fact. And as a result, we have people dying and getting injured every day because of these
Well, right,
cars.
and here in Pennsylvania, we have a lot of deer that jump out in front of cars. I don't know if that big of a deal in California, but there are dogs and cats, and a lot of times the sensors on the EVs, especially Teslas, even in auto drive, they'll try to slam on the brakes to try to save that animal. Well, now the car's in an accident.
Right.
And to me, it's like, for me, I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna smash right into the cat and dog, because to me, there's no excuse. I mean, human existence is better, or at least in my point.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I think so, and I think the problem with Tesla's automated driving system is that it creates a false sense of security,
hmm,
and then you tend to have these weird type situations where people are reading a book while they're driving down the highway, or they're
yeah,
in the I've seen video on YouTube of people in the back seat while the car is driving,
yeah,
and you can't tell me that they can do anything about something that happens very suddenly.
right. And now Tesla's getting into building semis, and I just can't imagine having those on the road. Uh, the liability on those is going to be enormous.
I had an attorney tell me 10 years ago that by now, personal injury lawyers, and especially ones that handle auto cases, were going to be obsolete because of everything that Google and Tesla and all of them were doing with automated driving systems. And I laughed. I said, no, that's not going to happen.
No, and the amount of EV cars getting into accidents are starting to exceed the other one, the gas powered cars.
For sure.
Yeah,
For
so
sure.
we're gonna need lawyers for probably until well into the future. I'll be long gone. You guys will still be around.
I'll be with you. It'll be the next generation.
Yeah, so let's talk about. I mean, we got a few minutes. Let's talk about the next generation. What's some of the things that you're doing to leave that legacy for the next generation of lawyers?
You know, it's interesting. One of the things that I get a lot of pleasure out of is mentoring other lawyers, and I've done that my whole career. And I was lucky enough to have a couple of attorneys who were senior to me that took me under their wing, and they tried to, what they said, teach me how to be a lawyer the right way.
Mhm.
Um, be a lawyer with dignity, with ethics, and really take care of your clients. I've tried to pass that on to the next generation, to the lawyers that work in my office, and even a lot of my opposing counsel. I have, this trial I just finished in San Jose. The prosecutor's in his early 30s, and he's a tremendous lawyer. He was very, very good, um, but very unhappy in his job. And he's reached out to me since the trial, and he wants to get together. He wants to talk, and he wants to learn about what I've done, and how I stay positive, and how I am able to be happy in this business.
Yeah,
I thought that
yeah,
was very interesting.
and I think when with everything that you do for your clients, staying happy is the key. But you, most lawyers can't do it for this amount of time and not feel the burden, of of
Well, if you can, I mean, I'm only 30 years old. I don't the white hair and everything. No, I get it. And I've talked to many lawyers. I've talked to my family members who go, "We don't know how you do this." I mean, day in and day out, year after year. And I think that it's important to take care of yourself. I can't stress self care uh, enough in this business. You can't become dependent on drugs and alcohol. You can't um, neglect yourself. And so I try to take care of myself. I work out at least 3 or 4 times a week, and meditate, and do all the things that I can to sort of insulate myself from the stress and the
Mhm.
pressure, so that I can continue to help my clients.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even tell you the last time I even drank a beer. I mean, for me, it's all my friends were like, "Rob, come to my party. We have." Nah, I think I'll just stay home.
Don't get me wrong, I still like my cocktails. But it's not an everyday thing anymore, like
Right.
when I was a kid and thought it was a lot of fun to party. But
Yeah,
now, hey, now it's all moderation.
yeah, and I think that's the key. And yeah, this is great, and we could probably talk about this all day long,
Absolutely.
and my listeners will probably be amazed at the stories that you would tell. But what I want you guys to do, if you're listening, please go to tedfordlaw.com, read some of the blogs because they'll have a lot more stories in there, and learn about Ted. And if you're thinking about going into being a lawyer, or even learning how to have more compassion being an entrepreneur, Ted's a hero. So
Thanks, Rob.
thanks, Ted, and for everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode.
Appreciate it. Thank you.